He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state when that light turns red. So don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Huh. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter. That's right, and welcome to the Fith chapter. I am Brian Chapman. He is Dennis Fithian. We're ready for episode number 97. And Dennis, the day Spartan basketball fans have been waiting for is finally here. Even if it should have happened 2 years ago, Foster Loyer is finally, officially in the transfer portal.
Yeah, hey, come on down to Ypsilanti. Stan Heath, the new coach there with Michigan State and Eastern ties. I would love to root for Foster Loyer and the MAC. And you know what? It would still be the same thing. Go green. I guess I guess at Eastern they don't say go green, go right, but it's go green. So come on,
same
Loyer.
colors.
Yeah, go to Eastern.
And I've always thought that Foster Loyer would be a decent MAC player. Nowhere in the Big Ten does he belong, not even at Penn State. If he wanted to come to We Are Penn State, I would say go somewhere else, go to Shippensburg or somewhere else in the state of Pennsylvania. But a nice little MAC school like Eastern Michigan, I think he'd be welcome there, especially considering he won Mr. Basketball in the state of Michigan. Maybe he feels homesick leaving. Go to Eastern Michigan. That's a nice little spot for Foster Loyer.
Yeah, it's better than Valparaiso.
Yeah, Valparaiso, I think, is even more along his lines. It's certainly not the Big Ten. And it's been too long, but finally he's gone. If you're a Michigan State fan, it's a good day for you. Hope that you guys are ready for 5 more fantastic chapters. Thank you to all who are watching today via YouTube, Facebook Live, and Twitch, and to those who are listening to the podcast via Apple, Google, and Spotify. And make sure that you like, subscribe, and participate in the show by sending in your feedback via Facebook Live and or via YouTube. Dennis will be reading your comments throughout the course of today's show. And if you're wondering what we'll be talking about, let's take a look at today's book. As you can see in the second chapter, the Tigers got to 500 and then tanked in Oakland. They now have the worst record the worst run differential in baseball, one of the worst records in baseball. Are they going to bounce back again because they've been so streaky, or will they remain one of the worst 3 teams in the league? In the third chapter, even though the news is rapidly evolving minute by minute, and there might be some more updates by the time we get to the third chapter, should the U.S. copy the European sports or the European soccer model? It's not just about the Super League, but that is certainly one of the things that's been in the news over the last couple of days, although the Super League could be done by the time we get to the third chapter. In the fourth chapter, Joe Milton has found a new home, Tennessee, and Cade McNamara, according to the Michigan quarterback coach, is the starting quarterback for the Wolverines. So who's going to have the better season in 2021? We'll tell you. And then in the fifth chapter, it's the major wager, where Dennis and I will try to make you guys a little bit of money. And before we get to the first chapter, I just want to thank the jury in Minnesota for making the right decision, making the correct decision to rule that Derek Chauvin was guilty on all counts. Not only was it the right thing to do, but for a much lesser important story, I have to imagine that a lot of sports would be shut down today if they ruled that Derek Chauvin was going to get off scot-free, because there'd be lots of protests and a lot of athletes would not want to partake in any games today. But because they made the right and obvious decision, life can go on as normal today.
Yeah, they don't always make the right and obvious decision, so that's why a lot of people, self-included, are on pins and needles and don't want to think about what would have happened if it would have come back with a different verdict. But good job there in Minneapolis.
Yeah, that was the first of hopefully many steps to improve life. But let's now turn the page to the first chapter, and that takes us to the Pistons, who had an easy loss put on a tee for them last night. It was a layup, and the reason it was a layup, even though it was against a bad team like the Cavaliers, is because the Pistons had 7 players missing. And they weren't just all scrubs like Rodney McGruder. They had some significant contributors like Wayne Ellington out. They had 2 starters in Mason Plumlee and Jeremy Grant, their best player, missing from that game. There was no way the Pistons should have even been competitive, even against a team like the Cavs, when you're missing 7 players, including Grant and Plumlee. So what happened? The Pistons got out to a 32-9 lead. Then they blew that lead by the time they get to the fourth quarter, but ended up winning the game 109-105. One of the great things about the win was who led them to the win. Frank Jackson, a guy that most Pistons fans haven't heard of, 20 points off the bench. But the real key was the rookie first-round picks drafted by Troy Weaver. You had Saddiq Bey putting up 20 points thanks to a hot first quarter. You had your boy, Dennis, Killian Hayes, a career-high 12 points. Not to say that's anything to brag about, but it's a career high, and 9 assists. And then Isaiah Stewart, continuing to dominate the paint and loading up the stat sheet, 18 points, 16 rebounds, 3 blocks, 3 steals. A lot of folks comparing him to Ben Wallace, but Ben Wallace, how often did he put up 18 points a game? Sounds like it was a pretty good day for the Pistons until you look at the standings, and the win kept the Pistons at the 3rd worst record in the league, but dropped them to 3 games behind Minnesota and 3 games behind Houston for the worst record in the league. They're also just a half game ahead of Orlando for the 4th worst record, 2 games ahead of the tanking Oklahoma City Thunder, and only 2.5 games ahead of the team that they beat yesterday, the Cavaliers, for the 6th worst record in the league. Dennis, when you weigh the improbable win, thanks to the greatness of the rookies, against the draft positioning that was hurt in yesterday's game, was yesterday more of a good day or a bad day for the Pistons?
Yeah, it was a good day. I'm not going to sit around crying about draft position all the time. It's like, this is what you want, actually. You want the players that you draft to go out there and to show some promise, to show some life, and they did that. So I can't look at the standings and feel bad about it. At the end, end up missing out. And, that's the way it's going to go. But, man, how frustrating, to be, like, all immersed into tanking and actually say you like the Pistons and then be upset like they lost. You can't be upset that they won that game last night. Saddiq Bey, he's a good set shot, 3-point shooter. He showed that in the first quarter when he was the hot as heck, scoring 18 points. And you know what? Late in that game, he actually put it on the floor and made one of the key passes when he set up Isaiah Stewart for a bucket late in that game. That was nice. I didn't know he really had that part in his game, so that was a nice job by Saddiq Bey. And Killian Hayes, it's apparent here that the game has slowed down a little bit for him. And you could see at 6'5", as a lefty, he can get to the basket. I'm not going to say on anybody, but you start seeing him being able to take guys off the drive or take guys off the dribble. You could also see that he's got that bowling ball pass, and he can throw some pretty sweet alley-oops. So he's a good passer. His passing in front of his scoring a little bit, but that was nothing positive. That was the best game that I've seen from Hayes. And then, Stewart, man, that guy he is comparable to Ben Wallace, man. When you play with that kind of energy, Detroit fans are going to love you. And, I love Isaiah Stewart. So, and you know what? You mentioned Frank Jackson. Frank Jackson's a fun guy to watch. I don't even remember him staying that one year at Duke and averaging 10 points. But he's a scorer. Like, I'm not talking about him being an all-star or anything else like that. But, he would be on a winning team. He'd be a nice player to come out when you're just looking for some instant offense. I think he's going to have that. I see him staying around in the NBA. I don't know if it'll be with the Pistons, but, he's a fun player to watch.
Yeah, he is a fun player to watch. And had it not been for him and had it not been for the play of the 3 rookies, because it was such a close margin, just a 4-point margin of victory, the Pistons would have lost that game. And look, when I look at whether it was a good day or a bad day for the Pistons, I think that it's preferable that the Pistons had lost that game. I wasn't happy that they won because it was such an easy game to lose. When you look at the team they were playing, it wasn't like they beat the Brooklyn Nets when all 3 of their stars were healthy. They beat a garbage Cavaliers team. It was extremely impressive that they were able to do that because of how many players were missing, the 7, including, like I mentioned, Grant and Plumlee. But when you want the draft positioning, it's preferable that you lose. That said, I agree with you. Overall, it was a good day for the Pistons. I would have preferred if the rookies had played well and they still had lost the game. If you give me the 18, 16, 3-3 from Isaiah Stewart, the 12-9 from Killian Hayes, and the 20 points from Sadiq Bey, and they lose by 4 points, then it's a win-win for everything, because then you don't have to worry about your draft positioning.
True.
And I get that you might want to say, well, you need to find ways to start winning games, and you need to find ways to get these rookies into a winning mindset. There's not going to be a winning mindset this late in the year. You got 14 games left in the season, but it's if you want to make progress as a franchise, yes, it's very important to ensure that you get yourself either Cunningham, Suggs, Mobley, or Green in the upcoming draft. But it's also extremely important that the 3 players that you just drafted a few months ago start to perform. You're not going to get out of this rebuilding phase if the 3 guys you drafted in the first round are not any good, particularly your lottery pick. We've seen Bey win Eastern Conference Player of the Week and continue to play strong as a starter throughout the year. We've seen Isaiah Stewart get better throughout the year, and now you can pretty much count on him contending for or getting a double-double on a regular basis. Compare that to at the start of the year when he was the number 3 center behind even Jahlil Okafor. And Killian Hayes, look, he's starting to get his legs together after his hips were all messed up. And if the Pistons are going to make some progress, he's going to have to play better. I've been talking for a while about how these last 20 and now 14 games are going to be key in terms of how the Pistons are going to move forward in terms of their draft. And this is his tryout. This is his opportunity to say, don't take Jalen Suggs. If you take Cunningham, then he can be the 2 guard while I'm the 1 guard. And if he doesn't step up, then Troy Weaver can take whoever he wants. Yesterday was a nice little step for him. So if the Pistons are going to turn this around and have a strong rebuild, they need these guys in the upcoming draft to be on the board for them. But the guys that are already on the team need to continue to do what they did last night.
Faint praise for Killian Hayes from Brian Chapman.
He had a solid game. And if he had the best game of his career, and like I said, 12 points is not like some gargantuan number, but 12 points and the 9 assists. I don't like the 5 turnovers, but the 12 points and the 9 assists from a rookie, you'll take that, and you hope that that won't be the best game by the end of the year. If in the final 14 games of the year, all of his games are worse than the game last night, then he didn't really build on it. But if we see more games like that, then we see the improvement that we're looking for.
Yeah, honestly, late in the game, Kevin Love had a 3 that would have been huge in that game, and he missed it. And I was, hoping that he made it. And they called the ball off of the Cavs when it was clearly, off of Killian Hayes. They took like 20 minutes to figure it out. And I was like, come on, man, let's go. We've got this.
I know you hate long reviews.
No, that one, he couldn't believe it. Like, he saw it like 5 seconds, and it took him, 20 minutes. And then, I wouldn't have minded if Josh Jackson dribbling the ball off his leg and it going out of bounds instead of him taking it to the hoop. But, I'm not going to cry about it. Like, oh, damn it, they won. Like, at some point, why am I tuning in? Like, I think if you're just a straight up tanker, like, or you like to say a no limit soldier, tanking like a no limit soldier, then you shouldn't tune in, man, because it just drives you nuts. You're tuning in.
But it's like I said, you want the rookies to play well and them to lose.
I know, but I have a hard time doing it. I watch it, but I'm not. It's hard. It's hard. It's been years since I've been able to root for the Pistons or the Wings or the Tigers or the Lions. Lions, I can root for like the first 2 or 3 games, and then the season's over. And it's like, okay, here we go. Let's root against the Lions again. Like, I'm used to that. So,
yeah, I just hope that at the end of the season, we're not going to look back at a game like this, where it was an easy game for them to lose, and then say, wow, there's like a 3-way tie for the 3rd worst record in the league, and it should have been a 4-way tie, but the Pistons had to beat the Cavs, and one of the teams that's tied for the 3rd worst record in the league is the Cavaliers. So instead of the Pistons having, a shot to have a great shot to get a top 3 pick. They're sitting there with the number 6 pick in the draft heading into the lottery or something like that. And the other thing is, like, when you look at these other lottery teams, they're not playing games when it comes to tanking. The Cleveland Cavaliers lost to the depleted Pistons last night. Minnesota and Houston have been tanking the whole year. Oklahoma City, if you look at these last couple of weeks, is the worst team in the league. They've lost like 10, 12 games in a row. And then Orlando, they gave away all their players at the deadline. The only other team in the bottom 6 in the NBA is the Pistons. And the Pistons, if you watch them on a regular basis, you know they're not good. But they're trying to win. So my fear, and I think the fear of a lot of Pistons fans, is they keep on screwing around like this. They got 14 games to go. 9 of them are at home, and the Pistons are 11 and 16 at home. They go out and they play 6 and 18 basketball. They finish with the 6th worst record in the league, and then the 10th worst team in the league jumps up to the number 2 pick in the draft, and the Pistons are picking 7th and have to take Moses Moody. That would really suck.
Yeah, well, are you going to root for Sadiq Bey and Isaiah Stewart to sprain their ankles or something?
No, I want them to win, but, you know...
You want them to play well and lose.
Yeah. Jahlil Okafor go 0 for 7 with 16 turnovers, stuff like that.
All right, let's look at some of the feedback. Beth on Facebook says, no guarantee they would get the first pick anyways in the lottery. So it's laughable how Troy Weaver was dissed when he selected Stewart at 16.
Yeah, well, not a lot of us knew a heck of a lot about Stewart. I didn't watch any Washington basketball games last year, and I knew that he had won the Pac-12 Freshman of the Year, so that was nice. But Troy Weaver certainly knew what he was doing. I mean, it's one thing to be a general manager and draft a guy in the top 3 or 5 in the draft and get it right, but when you get it right at 16, like it appears he has done with Stewart, and when you get it right at 19, which it appears he has done with Bey, that shows something about his ability to scout.
I'll say true that. All right, let's look at some of the other feedback, this time over on YouTube. Keith says, any win at this stage could be bad. You realize, he's talking about the Lions there. I'm sorry. A lot of Lions feedback comes in with even us not us talking about it here. Jelinik's never been so disappointed in a win in the Pistons in his life. Wow. Sideshow is here, which is good to see. Raj, he says that win didn't hurt them as much as people are thinking. The NBA draft lottery is rigged, and they will never give the Pistons the first pick anyway.
Well, the thing is, it's not just about the first pick. It's also about the second pick and the third pick and the fourth pick, because you use the lottery to select that. And if you drop one slot in the draft standings and you don't get into that top 4, it moves you back one spot in the draft order. So if the Pistons finish with the 5th worst record, then that means that if they get lucky, they'll be in the top 4. They could stand pat at number 5, but if any team between 6 and 14 jumps ahead of them, then they drop back to 6. If 2 jump ahead of them, then they drop back to 7. So by losing these games, what you're doing is you're keeping that floor higher. You know, if you finish with the worst record in the league, that means the worst pick that you can possibly get is the number 5 pick. If you finish with the 6th worst record, which is a possibility, I think the Pistons could potentially fall to like number 9 or 10. Think how awful that would be.
Roger says, do you guys think Troy Weaver will trade Sekou?
Oh, look, I know, Dennis, you're saying, hey, just keep on giving him more time. He's only 19 years old, just like Isaiah Stewart is only 19 years old. And he does have the concussion issue right now, but Sekou is the only reason he's contributing right now is because Blake Griffin is gone, and they have to throw somebody out there. But he's, game in and game out, he's just not been good, not showing significant signs of improvement. So, I think the big question is, who is going to want him? If there's a team that's going to want him and the Pistons finish with the 5th worst record and they can move up 2 slots to number 3 by throwing Sekou in, or 1 slot to number 4 by throwing Sekou in, potentially, but who's going to want Sekou at this point?
Yeah, I think what's working against Sekou is that he's not a Troy Weaver guy, and we've seen how quickly he's been moving on from previous regimes players. So that would put him in the crosshairs. But if you're a first round pick, you get the first 2 years guaranteed, and then the next 2 years are team options.
Yep.
So this is just the second year. So I think the Pistons will pick up the option, and then.
Well, I think they have to pick up the option before the second season started. So I think his third year is already locked in.
Yeah, and they were going to do that because he was just 19, and they're playing the real long game with him. Like if we hadn't have seen him at all last year, and then we'd have just seen him a little bit this year, there might be some more promise with him. I know you want more from guys right away. Maybe that's changing here, but you know what? He hasn't showed a whole heck of a lot. You know, last year he had like the week where he had that outburst against Boston, and he had the dunk against your boy Kardashian. You know, that was like his big deal. But when you watch him play, it's not like you look at him and say, ooh, like Bay, all three of the rookies this year, even Hayes has shown more. Maybe not.
Saben Lee has shown more than Sekou, the second round pick.
All right, now
and I would also say, and I was just thinking about this about a week ago, that perhaps one guy you can consider trading, especially if you finish in the top 5 and you might want to move up a couple of spots, maybe Killian Hayes. Maybe there's a team that's willing to move back a couple of spots and say, hey, we'll take the number 5 player in the draft and Killian Hayes, and we'll allow you to move up 2 or 3 spots to get Suggs or 2 or 3 spots to get Mobley. I don't think anyone's going to trade down when they have the chance to get Cunningham, or 2 or 3 spots to get Jalen Green.
Yeah, well, you want Hayes out of here as fast as possible. Hayes has looked better, but if you had the 3rd or 4th pick, they could still take Suggs. You don't pass up on talent at the position just because you think you have that spot filled, i.e. Drexler Jordan. Exactly, Keith. Why would you trade Sekou now at his lowest value? He's 19. He's a number 1 pick. He's 15th overall. That you should have at least a couple more years to see what you got. And Paul says Pistons take Pitts at 7. Oh wait, just kidding. Yeah, he wants Kyle Pitts, the tight end, to fall to 7.
I'm sure he does. All right, let's turn the page to the second chapter.
That gets us to the Tigers. 6-10. Their game got, I'll say it, snowed out. So look out the window here. I think that's appropriate. Snowed out. They'll play your favorite kind of doubleheader tomorrow. And I like what Ernie Banks said. It's the Brian Chapman. Play 2, 7 innings apiece.
Yeah, let's not let's play 2. Let's play 14 18ths of a game or something like that, or 14 ninths of a game.
That's it. But they got swept out in Oakland, and what do we make of them? This was after getting swept by Cleveland. They came back and swept Houston, but then they go out to Oakland, scored 2 runs in 3 games, kicked the ball all over the field. Where are you at with them?
Well, look, this is it. The Tigers are done with 500 for the season. They're 4 games below 500. They're 6-10 on this 4-game losing streak. Second worst record in the American League, tied for the 4th worst record in baseball. We know that the Nationals and the Yankees are going to march ahead of the Tigers at some point. The Tigers, and one thing, regardless of sport, baseball, basketball, football, hockey, is that run differential is oftentimes, or point differential is oftentimes a better indicator of how good or bad your team is. If you come out to like a 10-6 start, but your run differential is -7, then odds are you're probably going to start to get worse. The Tigers have this bad record, and their run differential is -28. The second worst in all of baseball is -23. So they're clearly the worst in baseball. They've given up the most runs in baseball, and I think they're going to remain under 500 for the remainder of the season. Even though their next 7 games are against Pittsburgh and Kansas City, they're not going to make a run in that span, even though they're all at home. Last year, obviously the Tigers were bad in so many ways, but the most troubling part about the team was the pitching staff. They had the worst ERA in all of baseball. This year, worst ERA in all of baseball at 5.13. Last year, the 8th worst whip. This year, 4th worst whip. Last year, Tigers pitchers gave up the 19th most walks. This year, the 3rd most walks. And I'm surprised it is that low, given that they walked 11 in a game, I think it was on Thursday, against the Oakland A's. They're hitting .212. they have 20 home runs, but it seems like half of them took place in that Astros series. So maybe AJ Hinch still had that buzzer system working, and he just called up his old guys and said, "Hey, get the buzzers back in place for when I come to town." But the lineup is atrocious. Everybody was excited about Akil Baddoo. He went 0 for 11 with 8 strikeouts against the Oakland A's. He's now a 263 hitter when a week ago he was around 400. It's brutal, and I don't know what the sign is for optimism. I would expect that this team is going to be, for the third, fourth, fifth year, whatever it is in a row, in the bottom 3 in all of baseball when this season ends.
Yeah, that's a very, I was going to say pessimistic, but probably realistic view of them. It's sad to think I didn't think about them not getting back to 500. I'm not ready to quite go there yet. The reason to have any kind of optimism about the team is still some of the young arms, and you just hope they perform, or you see Fulmer or you see Boyd. But when your teams aren't scoring any runs and they're playing bad defense, that's a bad combination if you're a fan. Like, I watched those games in Oakland, and it was as brutal as it could be. And Baddoo, that was a terrible series for him. And they've got some winnable games here against the Pirates and Royals, so maybe they can get back to 500. But yeah, not a lot to write home about when it comes to the baseball team.
Yeah, like I think it was on Saturday when Casey Mize pitched, and I was driving down to the casino to watch the game, and I left a little bit late, but before I could get there, he had already given up 2 or 3 home runs. So you think that one of the reasons to watch the Tigers this year is Casey Mize, particularly after that great start that he had in Houston, and then he goes up against the Oakland A's, and you think, wow, are Jose Canseco and Mark McGwire juicing up for the A's again, because he's just bomb. And then when I finally got there and they were showing the replays from the previous inning of what happened, oh, look, fastball right down the middle. Of course they're going to smoke it out the park. So it was ugly. And when you think about what there is to look forward to for the remainder of the season for the Tigers, I mean, certainly you'd like to get some wins, but number one, you want to see who their token all-star is going to be, and it looks like it's going to be Matt Boyd, because at least he's been very good to start this year, and nobody else is in contention now that Akil Baddoo is hitting in the 260s. Number two, who's going to make any significant improvements? And then number three, like, how bad is it going to be? You hope that it's not going to be 2 years ago, like 114 losses, but how bad is it going to be?
Yeah, well, they get the super compact 7-inning doubleheader. That could make things better pretty quick tomorrow, so we'll see how that goes. Let's go to some of the feedback. Brian says Manfred ball is the best kind of baseball. Can't wait for those 7-inning games tomorrow.
Ugh.
He says Mize is going to be a roller coaster all year. We'll have 1 really good start, then 2 really bad starts. Roger said, well, the Tigers take Pitts at 7. Now everybody's joining in on that one. He says Tigers suck, as we knew they would. They're typically as tough to watch as it was for me watching the Pistons the last 4 years. The Pistons are actually a better watch this year than the Tigers. Ouch.
So far, it's just depended on the series. And this past series against Oakland, they were a very tough watch. When they played against Houston, they were a very fun watch. But I think we will see more series like we have against Oakland than we had against Houston for the remainder of the season.
Raj says, do you guys like Fulmer getting put back in the rotation, or should he have stayed in the pen? No, I like him in the rotation. That's the kind of pitcher he is. And the most encouraging thing is not the way that he pitched, although that's a pretty big one, is that his velocity was up over 97. So he looks like the old Michael Fulmer. So I think that's some good news.
Oh, it's all based on performance. If he continues to perform the way he performed in his last outing, and he performs like he did in his Rookie of the Year season or in his All-Star season, then yes, it's great to have him in the rotation. And obviously the reason that it happened was because of an injury, and injuries are going to happen. If he stinks up the joint again, then they'll have to throw somebody else in there. Right now, I'm not going to say they have a plethora of pitching, because once again, they have the worst ERA in all of baseball. But you got Spencer Turnbull, who was their best starting pitcher last year, coming back to start in one of the games tomorrow. I believe the plan was to have Tariq Skubal piggyback him, so you might see both of those guys in. But there's an opportunity for somebody to steal or to take control of one of those spots. It's just outside of Boyd, you can't really trust much in that rotation right now.
Beth on Facebook, they will lose over 100 games again this year. Sadly, I was hoping it would be maybe 89 or 90 losses. Yeah, you and me both, Beth, but that looks like a pipe dream now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we can turn the page now to the third chapter, and that takes us to our favorite sport, Dennis, European soccer. Well, no, it's not my favorite, not your favorite. But the reason we're talking about that is because the best teams in the UEFA Champions League want some more money, so they unveiled this plan over the weekend for 12 of the top teams in Europe and 12 of the top teams in the UEFA Champions League to form this league called the Super League that I think was supposed to start in 2023. And it's not a huge deal in America, but soccer nerds are really talking about it. It's a huge deal in Europe and the rest of the world. FIFA's talking about banning all the players from the Super League from competing in the World Cup. There have been protests. People don't like, and this is interesting, people don't like that the influence of greedy American owners is fueling this, because you see a lot more individuals like LeBron James and the Fenway Group and others taking minority or majority stakes in these European soccer teams. And there's already some severe reservations. I got an alert a few hours ago that Chelsea and Manchester City are preparing to withdraw from this European Super League. And then about an hour or two ago, I got another notification that all 6 of the British Premier League teams, which would constitute half of the European Super League teams, have said that they're going to drop out. So it looks like in less than 48 hours, it's going from what the heck is this to, oh, this is nothing. It's going to have a shelf life like 1% as long as the XFL. But it's also gotten a lot of Americans to consider what it would be like to implement some of European soccer's rules into American sports, like a Super League or like relegation. Dennis, what elements, if any, from European soccer would you like to be implemented into American sports?
Just remember, I treat soccer like I do the luge. Like once every 4 years, I might watch a couple minutes of it, in the World Cup. But other than that, I'm not paying too much attention to it. But if there was one thing, I don't think it can happen, but relegation would be sweet. Like if you actually were tanking out, they took the bottom 2 teams and like sent them down to the minors, and then took the 2 teams to the minors and brought them up. That would be pretty cool. But other than that, I really don't see anything that could happen. And I did see a lot of, when it comes to college football, they keep condensing the Power 5, and there's a thought that maybe they could even condense them further. And if that happened, maybe you could come out with a Super 15 or a Power 20, which would be pretty awesome when you looked at the 15, 20 teams and thinking about them playing a full schedule against each other. It would be like a playoff every year if they did something like that. But no, those are the things that I thought of.
Yeah, I think the Super League for college football is definitely the thing that a lot of folks are talking about. I saw that on Sports Illustrated, one of their writers proposed a 15-team league, and one of the first things I thought was, why are Nebraska and Michigan in this 15-team league, and why is Wisconsin left out? But
I was wondering why Penn State was in there myself.
Yeah, considering they won a Big Ten championship just a few years ago, considering they've had, 3 11-win seasons in the last 5 years, they clearly belong there. They're the absolute right choice to have as one of your top 15 teams, 16 teams in the country. But I think for a Super League for college football, it'd be more of the 4 super conference model with 64 total teams that people have been talking about for a long time. And you think about the ability to have September football mean something for every team, I think that'd be huge, because right now in college football, you've got most teams having 3 non-conference games, and for instance, Michigan will have one game that means something like Washington, and then they'll throw in Ball State and Akron, and you got a couple of games that just absolutely don't matter. And if you could scrap that out and have Michigan playing Washington in one game, USC in another game, and then North Carolina in another game before they start Big Ten football, then all of a sudden all the games count. You wouldn't be just cutting checks to garbage MAC and garbage Sun Belt and garbage AAC teams so that you can boost up your home attendance numbers and boost up, a bunch of other stuff. And you wouldn't have folks saying, let's go to the apple orchard or let's get a tea time on a Saturday in college football season. You'd have folks parked in front of the TV watching big games. But I also, like you, like the idea of relegation. And I mean, I don't know how many teams it would be, but I would think it would be a better idea to have more than 2 teams. Like if you were to look at a sport like, I mean, all 4 professional sports in America have approximately 30 teams. And if you said that you would have a subdivision, and you would expand it to 50 total teams, but the top 30 would be in the major leagues, and then you would drop the final 5 out, and you would raise the top 5 in the bottom league up, then think about Al Avila. If Al Avila was just going to keep on tanking like this, Chris Ilitch would have a ton of pressure to fire him because the Tigers would be sitting in the B League. They'd be sitting in quadruple A for half a decade, and people wouldn't stand for rebuilding teams that go on that long. If you want to stop tanking in basketball, I tell the Pistons and the Magic, you're going to be facing the Albuquerque Mosquitoes if you keep on losing. So I think that would be a great idea to reduce tanking. And then when you go from that minor league to the major leagues, there'd be a big celebration. And when you go from the majors to the minors because you've tanked out the season, everybody would be irate because they know their next season doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, all good points. Don't forget, a week from Thursday, it is the NFL Draft. It's going to be our 100th show. So we want you to get involved in our draft challenge. We're looking for the picks 1 through 10, with 1 being worth 1 point and the 10th pick being worth 10 points. See how that works. And we will have a prize provided by Pro Sport Zone and the Laurel Park Mall. I got a couple former Michigan wideouts coming in for some autograph sessions. Mario Manningham.
Oh.
And
Penn State fans don't like him.
That's going to be early in June. That's right, at the Pro Sport Zone. So we're looking forward to those. Go to the Fifth Chapter. It's a hashtag Fifth Chapter Mock for you to get involved in that. Of course, we're also giving bonus points and big thumbs up for anybody that goes to the podcast and writes a review in there. And you can use the review as the place to put your picks as well. So all of that available for you.
That's right. Make sure you get in. All right, what kind of feedback are we getting in this 3rd chapter?
Well, it's all about football, but not soccer. Beth wants to know if Brady Hoke coached at Ball State. He did. Let's see. Yeah, it's all about the Lions. If the Lions ended up with the best pass rusher in the 3rd round this year and the 1st round pick next year, how would you feel?
I think anytime you get the best player at a particular position in a draft in the 3rd round, you're going to be feeling great about it. Like, how did the Seattle Seahawks feel about getting the best quarterback in that draft class when they drafted Russell Wilson? Probably ecstatic.
Yeah, that's it for the soccer football feedback.
All right, let's turn the page now to the 4th chapter.
Yeah, kind of a couple surprising developments. Joe Milton, formerly of Michigan, has decided to go to Tennessee to play football. Meanwhile, U of M quarterback coach Matt Weiss said that Cade McNamara is the starter and he will have a 10-year NFL career. What did you think about those two? I guess 3 things. What Weiss said, and I'm naming him as a starter, 10-year NFL career, and then Milton going to Rocky Top.
Well, I think one thing that a lot of folks are going to do is they're going to look at this 2021 season and look at these 2 quarterbacks, McNamara and Milton, and see who has the better season. And folks in Ann Arbor in particular are going to say, well, is Milton going to have a better season now that he's not dealing with Jim Harbaugh because Harbaugh can't develop a quarterback? Or is McNamara going to be the better quarterback because he beat out Joe Milton and proved that he was the better quarterback? I think it's obvious that Cade McNamara is going to have the better season. Not to say that he's going to have a great season because he was not great last year. But despite the fact that that Harbaugh has not been able to develop quarterbacks, and you can look at the case study of Brandon Peters as an example of someone who improved after leaving Michigan. I just think that Joe Milton sucks. I think that he's just a terrible quarterback, and he's got a terrible attitude. I think he thinks his bleep doesn't stink, and I think that was clear after he had a good but not great game against a Minnesota team that we didn't realize was an atrocious team until a couple of weeks later. And by that time, we saw that Joe Milton just flat out stunk. But going into that second game of the season, talking about I don't know who this Michigan State player is, and just seeming like he was on top of the world, and he was buying into all that hype about I'm the next Cam Newton. He didn't have to say it, but it just seemed like he was feeling that. And then he just stunk the rest of the way, and then he transfers afterwards. I didn't like his attitude at all. I was surprised that he picked Tennessee, where he's actually going to have to compete for a job. But that's another reason why I think that McNamara is going to have a better season. Not to say that McNamara is some untouchable player, but if he's the incumbent starter, he's already been named the starter, and the competition isn't all that great, then he's got a leg up on having a better season than Milton. J.J. McCarthy's a 5-star quarterback, but he's a true freshman, and McNamara is in his third year in the program. Alan Bowman, this transfer from Texas, he sucked last year. 10 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, and was benched. And he doesn't even get there until the summer. In his last game of the season, it was a 16-13 win against Bleep in Kansas, and he went 15 for 26 for 117 yards and no touchdowns. Jelinek, the intern, could do better than that, and he can't even drive a golf ball 300 yards. So
or putt 6 feet.
Yeah.
Well, Jelinek says Milton can inaccurately throw footballs into the ground in the SEC. I wanted Joe Milton to stay and compete for the job at Michigan. I think he must be promised something up there at Tennessee to go into that type of situation. I don't think Weiss, I like coaches and players to say things that are on their mind, but he had a bad read of that room when he talked about, he's going to have a 10-year NFL career. There's no reason to say that. You can name him as a starter. You could say, hey, he could potentially play in the NFL. He's that good, but I don't know. I think that comment's going to come back to bite him, or potentially could come back to bite him for sure. So those are the kind of things that I was thinking about it.
Well, when I look at that comment about having a 10-year career, it's that would be the most successful career for a Michigan quarterback since Tom Brady. But when you think about a quarterback having a 10-year career, that leads me to believe that he's going to be a career backup. Because if you're a career starter, then you're probably having a 15-year career, unless you like to pull an Andrew Luck, or maybe you have some health issues like Alex Smith. But if you're playing in the NFL for 10 years, and that means maybe for the first year or two you're competing for a starting job, and then you turn into Marcus Mariota. So I know he wasn't trying to say that, but if he's having a 10-year career, then he's projecting Cade McNamara to be a clipboard holder.
Yeah, Chad Henne started a few years there, so I know he's continued to stay in the league. So
and he's a career backup.
It seems like the last maybe 10 years, but then he start for the first 6 years. So I don't know.
He was like an off and on starter in his first few years.
All right, I won't argue about it. Well, that's what I got. Yeah. I'm ready to go to the major wager.
All right, and as we do that, let's first take a look at what we bet on last week on Thursday. Give us a quick reminder of that, Dennis, and what you're thinking about for tonight.
Well, if I have to, I went back and I bet Will Zalatoris. He had a nice showing in the Masters, but he ended up this last week down in South Carolina with a finish of 42nd, and I picked him to win. So that's not going to get it done. I look to some of the NFL draft props. At this time of year, I like betting on the NFL. We'll see what happens when the NBA and NHL playoffs come around. But betting on Major League Baseball night in and night out, it's not going to be for me. But the NFL draft, I like the Devontae Smith prop. 11.5 is his draft position, and it's -112 if you think it's under or over. I'm going to pick under. I think he'll get picked in those first 11 picks. So that's going to be my selection. Devontae Smith to be selected in the first 11 picks in the NFL draft.
Yeah, I saw, just following up on that, an interesting prop bet that they were talking about on Daily Wager about an hour or so ago, where they said that the over-under on wide receivers drafted in the first round was set at 4.5, and if you take the over, it's minus 210, which obviously is a lot of juice on the casino side. But when you think about how there's 3 guaranteed to go in like the top 10, are there going to be 2 more drafted? It seems like the answer to that would be yes. So that's another thing to consider taking. As far as I'm concerned, on Thursday, I went with another Major League Baseball strikeout prop. I took under 6.5 strikeouts for Dodgers pitcher Julio Urias because my model projected him to record just 4.19 strikeouts, and my model was off a little bit. But because Urias ended up with just 6 strikeouts, the under 6.5 was a winner. So my model is still performing fairly well. Tonight, I'm going to go with another Major League Baseball strikeout prop. I'm going to Nationals starting pitcher Patrick Corbin, and I'm seeing if I can pull up his numbers because the game has started. But my model projected that Patrick Corbin would record 4.2 strikeouts today, so I took the under with the over-under set at 5.2. And while I wait for the box score to load up, if you want a game that hasn't started yet, you could take Corbin Burns of the Brewers. That over-under for strikeouts is set at 8.5, and my model only projects him to have 6.16. And so I wasn't able to get the live update on how many strikeouts Patrick Corbin has, but hopefully he's at 0.
Yeah, well, that model's been working for you, and that was Shane Bieber, so good luck on that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and that's the way you make money is you get yourself a model, right?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of the NFL draft, we will zero in on it Thursday. A lot of Lion slaps are talking about, I'm good with a tackle, I'm good with a tight end, I'm good with a quarterback, I'm good with moving back. We'll try to zero in exactly which we're really thinking that they should take, as we'll be within 1 week away from the NFL draft. I want to thank Brian Jelinek for all his hard work. We'll see him on Thursday. And for Brian Chapman, I'm Dennis Fithian. Good night.
He represents the mitten by way of Penn State. When Chapman gets to talking sports, the people can't wait. He represents the mitten. Be a true EMU, but cut Dennis in the fall, and his veins bleeding blue. They got respect around the state. When that light turns red, so don't sleep on these dudes. Just invite your friends to cut your nap short and tip your cap for and sit back for the Fith chapter. Brian Chapman. Dennis Fithian. When they open their mouths, they spit in the facts, bro. This ain't even optional, man. You just have to tune into YouTube to watch the broadcast or download it to your phone to peep the podcast. They mix laughter, they get after. It's all captured in the Fith chapter.